The narrative begins by setting the grim stage of World War II in June 1940, immediately after the evacuation of British and French troops from Dunkirk and the subsequent fall of France to Nazi Germany. The United Kingdom becomes Hitler's next target, but the miraculous rescue at Dunkirk reveals a crucial weakness: Hitler is not invincible. The ensuing Battle of Britain, despite the Luftwaffe's apparent superiority, sees the determined Royal Air Force defend their nation, signaling a shift in the war's momentum. Hitler's unexpected turn eastward with a surprise attack on the Soviet Union, violating the non-aggression pact with Stalin, further complicates the global conflict. The vast frozen plains of Russia prove a far more challenging adversary than anticipated. In December 1941, Japan, an Axis partner, bombs Pearl Harbor, dragging the United States into the war and transforming it into a truly global struggle. This act of aggression underscores Hitler's grave underestimation of his enemy's strength and resilience. With America, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain now united, the Allies are poised to strike back, confronting the axis of evil from North Africa to the Far East. The film then delves into the oppressive reality of Nazi-occupied Europe. A brutal police state emerges, characterized by banned private transport, German-controlled media, and widespread fear. Most horrifyingly, Jewish families vanish, driven into hiding, or like Anne Frank's family, forced into concentration camps. These camps, initially for political opponents, evolve into centers of unspeakable horror, systematically rounding up and murdering Jews, communists, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and ethnic minorities in Hitler's vision of an Aryan master race. Pro-German leaders such as Henri Pétain of the Vichy government in France are installed across occupied Europe. Despite the terror, a flicker of hope remains. Britain's resilience during the Blitz and Hitler's failure to conquer the island bolster the British people's resolve. By 1941, Britain is fighting back, inspired by Prime Minister Winston Churchill's stirring BBC speeches marked by the V for Victory symbol and Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Exiled leaders like General Charles de Gaulle broadcast messages of hope and resistance to their nations. Though nascent, these resistance movements signify a growing defiance. A catastrophic strategic blunder by Hitler, Operation Barbarossa, launched on June 22, 1941, sees a massive German army invade the Soviet Union. Despite initial rapid gains, capturing key cities and pushing towards Moscow, events in the Pacific dramatically shift the balance of power. Tensions between Japan and the United States escalate, leading to an American oil embargo. In response, Japan targets Allied territories for resources, a move that allows Stalin to redeploy elite Siberian divisions from the Japanese border to defend Moscow. By December 1941, the German offensive on Moscow is abandoned and the Soviets launch a fierce counterattack. Simultaneously, Japanese fleets assemble in the Pacific. On December 7, 1941, waves of Japanese aircraft devastate the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, destroying battleships and airfields and resulting in over 400 American lives lost. This attack, followed by assaults across Allied Pacific territories, prompts President Franklin D. Roosevelt to declare war on Japan the next day. The United States, shedding its isolationist stance, is now fully engaged, turning its focus towards Hitler and Nazi Germany. Hitler, bound by the Tripartite Pact, declares war on the United States on December 11, a move Roosevelt anticipated and welcomed, as it justifies sending American troops to the European theater to support the British. An extraordinary alliance forms between Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, the Big Three, despite their stark political differences. While Roosevelt trusts the Soviets to a degree, Churchill remains cautious of Stalin's intentions. As the war progresses, tensions between the US and the Soviet Union will surface, but for now their combined military might makes Hitler's conquest dreams unattainable. On the Russian front, Hitler's decisions become erratic as the tide turns. He declares himself commander-in-chief, ordering no retreat, frustrating his generals. In the Pacific, Japan initially makes rapid advances, seizing Guam, the Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and threatening Australia. However, the Battle of Midway in June 1942 marks a turning point, forcing Japan onto the defensive. American forces launch their first major offensive, the Battle of Guadalcanal, a brutal introduction to jungle warfare. Australian soldiers face their own grueling battle along the Kokoda Track in Papua New Guinea, defending Port Moresby against a Japanese land invasion, enduring extreme conditions in unforgiving jungles. At Milne Bay, another Japanese assault is confronted. Attention then shifts to North Africa. Churchill, concerned by Nazi commander Erwin Rommel's capture of Tobruk, a critical port in Libya, and the threat to the Suez Canal, sends General Bernard Montgomery to revitalize the Eighth Army for a counter-offensive. Churchill seeks American support for a large-scale Anglo-American landing in Northwest Africa, a plan he presents to a skeptical Stalin in Moscow in August 1942. Churchill argues that securing North Africa would expose Hitler's soft underbelly, paving the way for an invasion of Italy and eventually France. Stalin agrees to hold out through the winter. Even as Churchill returns, the German advance on Stalingrad reaches a critical point. Over 1 million Axis troops approach the city, which holds immense symbolic and strategic importance for both Hitler and Stalin. Stalingrad's position on the Volga River is crucial for transport and access to oil-rich Caucasus, vital for the Soviet war effort. Stalin decrees no retreat, forcing civilians to dig trenches. On August 23, 1942, the Luftwaffe unleashes a devastating aerial assault, leveling districts. By September 14, General Friedrich Paulus and the German Sixth Army launch their ground assault, leading to brutal street-by-street, hand-to-hand combat. By mid-September, Germans control 90% of the city. But the Russian winter sets in, freezing the Volga and crippling the Luftwaffe's supply lines. Meanwhile, in North Africa, Montgomery's 8th Army pushes back Rommel's forces at El Alamein. Despite Hitler's orders to fight to the death, Rommel withdraws, marking a decisive victory for Churchill. The Allies then press forward with Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa led by American General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The plan is to seize key ports and airfields in Morocco and Algeria, with simultaneous assaults on Casablanca, Oran and Algiers, then advance into Tunisia. The operation aims for cooperation from Vichy France, but Roosevelt is wary of British involvement due to lingering French resentment over Churchill's order to destroy the French fleet at Oran in 1940. To avoid tensions, British forces delay their involvement by a week, allowing Americans to negotiate with Vichy commanders. Roosevelt tries to sideline Charles de Gaulle, presenting General Henry Giroux as an alternative French leader. Covertly, General Marc Clark meets with Vichy officials in Algeria to secure cooperation, as French forces in the region outnumber Allied troops. Negotiations progress, but the presence of Admiral François Darlan, the second highest-ranking Vichy official in Algiers, complicates Roosevelt's plan, as Pétain has rejected his appeal for support. Despite uncertainties, Operation Torch proceeds on November 8, 1942. The Western Naval Task Force under General George S. Patton targets Casablanca, while a Central American force heads to Oran. The Eastern Task Force with British and American troops prepares to land in Algiers. It is the largest amphibious assault since the war began. Following successful landings, British General Kenneth Anderson takes command while Jimmy Doolittle oversees air operations. Days before the invasion, Giroux, expecting to lead, is taken to Eisenhower's headquarters in Gibraltar, where he eventually accepts a passive role. On November 8, Allied ships approach the African coast. A coup in Casablanca fails, leaving French defenses prepared, leading to intense fire on American troops and destroyers. Despite resistance, Patton's men secure the beachhead and U.S. troops enter Casablanca within 2 days. The Central Attack Force faces difficulties landing near Oran due to shallow waters, but after a skirmish, Allied troops push inland. Algiers sees a more successful coup, with some French generals welcoming the invaders. Eisenhower emerges as a highly capable military leader. However, political tensions persist. In Algiers, Eisenhower opens negotiations with Admiral Darlan, offering him continued command of French forces if he sides with the Allies. This enrages Free French supporters, especially Charles de Gaulle, who is incensed by the idea of maintaining Vichy rule with its oppressive policies and concentration camps. Hitler and Mussolini, equally furious about Darlan's betrayal, immediately occupy Vichy France. To mislead the Germans about the Sicilian invasion, codenamed Operation Husky, the Allies stage an elaborate deception, planting fake invasion plans on a corpse dressed as a British officer, which washes ashore in Spain. Nazi generals fall for the ruse, diverting defenses to Sardinia. On July 10, Operation Husky begins. Fierce winds make landings perilous, but also catch the enemy off guard. Syracuse falls on the first day, and within 2 weeks the Allies enter Palermo, welcomed by Italian civilians. By mid-July, Montgomery's 8th Army takes Catania, and Patton, furious at being cut off, drives his troops hard to reach Messina, first viewing the invasion as a competition. Patton ultimately wins, entering Messina hours before the last Axis forces escape to mainland Italy. The fall of Sicily has profound effects. Mussolini is overthrown and imprisoned, and an armistice is secretly negotiated with the Allies. However, Hitler, furious at Italy's betrayal, reinforces the country with troops from the Eastern Front. Mussolini is dramatically freed and installed as leader of a German-controlled puppet state in the north. Despite these complications, the Allies push forward with plans to invade mainland Italy. Operation Baytown, led by Montgomery, sees Allied troops land unopposed in Calabria on September 3, with Rommel reassigned and General Kesselring commanding German forces in the south. Meanwhile, British and American forces assemble for a second larger invasion at Salerno, miles south of Naples. On September 9, the main attack force, led by General Marc Clark, lands under cover of darkness, initiating a grueling battle. German artillery and fierce counterattacks turn the coastline into a brutal battlefield. Amidst this, an uprising in Naples sees citizens battling occupying forces for 3 days, eventually succeeding in driving them out. When the Allies enter Naples, they find utter devastation due to Kesselring's scorched earth retreat, but the port is remarkably reopened within a week despite persistent German air raids. The troops press north, facing slow progress through formidable natural barriers like the Volturno and Trigno rivers, compounded by torrential rain and enemy fire. The swift victory in Sicily becomes a distant memory as the struggle for Italy transforms into an exhausting war of attrition, with the dream of capturing Rome slipping further away. The month-long battle to push from the Volturno to the Bernhard Line pushes both the 5th and 8th Armies to their limits. On November 28, 1943, Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill meet in Tehran to chart the war's final phase. Stalin insists on an Anglo-American invasion of France as key to victory, and Roosevelt presses Churchill to agree. Churchill, reluctant to divert British forces from Italy, eventually accepts the inevitable setting sights on the Normandy landings for spring 1944. Churchill vows to commit all forces to France once Rome falls, but the Italian campaign continues to drain resources. By December, Eisenhower is recalled from the Italian front and receives news of his next assignment, Supreme Allied Commander in Europe tasked with leading the ambitious invasion. Montgomery is also recalled to Britain to prepare for D-Day. As 1944 dawns, fresh victories buoy the Allied cause with the siege of Leningrad broken and German forces surrendering across the continent. On June 4 the Allies enter Rome, marking the fall of another empire. Jubilant crowds fill the streets as the Nazi occupation crumbles. The path to victory is finally opening, and just across the channel the greatest invasion in history is about to begin, with British, American and Commonwealth forces poised to storm the beaches of Normandy. France stands on the brink of liberation and the final battle for Europe has begun. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.